Hello, I'm film historian Tony Maeda.
And I'm Brad Shreve, who's just a guy who likes movies.
We discuss movies and television from Hollywood's golden age. We go behind the scenes and share our opinions, too.
And of course, being the average guy, my opinions are the ones that matter.
As does your self-delusion. Welcome to Going Hollywood. Hey, everybody, I'm back. But I'm not all by myself this time. I'm so excited. I'm so excited not to be alone. I am not only alone, I have such a wonderful, wonderful guest today. And I know you're going to be as excited as I am to talk to this man. His name is Brandon Davis. Yes, Brandon Davis is the host of the Front Row Classics podcast with NPR Illinois. And I'm so excited to have him here today to talk with me on Going Hollywood. Welcome, Brandon. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Tony. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we were able to do this.
I am too. I'm so thrilled. I was a guest on Brandon's podcast a couple weeks ago, right, Brandon? On Front Row Classics.
I released it a couple of weeks ago. I think we did it almost a month ago, maybe.
Oh, wow. God, time flies. Yeah. Time flies. So that was so much fun. And guess what we talked about? Listener, guess. I mean, what do you think we talked about? Yes, we talked about Lucy. And we also talked about Grey Gardens. No surprise to anyone there. That's what we talked about. But we had a great time. So I'm so excited to have you on here, Brandon. Brandon's actually going to be joining me for two. He's going to be my guest co-host for 2 episodes coming up, 2 consecutive episodes. So I'm excited about that. This one, I'm thinking it's a getting to know you kind of a thing for people who may not be familiar with your podcast, your incredible podcast on NPR Illinois. So Brandon, talk to me a little bit about, I want to hear your origin story, because you are one busy man. And I'd love to hear what got you involved in the podcast, first of all, how that came about. And of course, what fascinated you about getting involved in classic Hollywood?
Oh, well, long version or short version? No, so I...
We got an hour. Take a long version.
Okay. No, I mean, I'm with NPR Illinois, as Tony said, and I grew up in a little town just north. I live in Springfield, Illinois currently, and I grew up in a little town about 30 minutes north called Lincoln, Illinois, which for all you history trivia experts is the first town named after Abraham Lincoln, even before he was president.
I didn't know that.
So that is the claim to fame there. But I grew up loving movies, period. And little by little, I had a grandmother who was my gateway into classic film. And it started with, first of all, her just bringing me VHSs of the Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals. So started with Oklahoma and The King and I, and then that segued into the MGM musicals, and then that segued. So musicals were the first genre I loved. But what I found was my parents liked movies, but they didn't love movies. So a lot of this stuff was self-discovery on my part. So I'm grateful to have grown up when I did in the 90s and early aughts when video stores were still around. So if I liked somebody, so say if I saw Singing in the Rain and I enjoyed Gene Kelly, I could go to the video store and find other things that Gene Kelly did. And then that was also the time when IMDb first became a thing. So you could easily go and look out someone's filmography and see what was available. So it was really self-discovery on my part. And then, of course, Turner Classic Movies comes around and other things. AMC was still showing classic movies at the time. So it was all just a bit of self-discovery on my part, but I became a big movie buff, and it just became sort of my side passion in life. And then, man, the podcasting came about. It actually started when I was in college with a friend of mine who's another movie buff.
Oh, wow.
Not into classic film, but into film in general. And I introduced him little by little to classic film in the dorm. And he started a blog, which was popular in 2008, 2009. And I
remember blogs.
And we would write little things for the blog. And life happened. We graduated from college. We kind of went our separate ways. He moved back to the area around 2015, got married. I was in the wedding. And about a month later, he and a couple other friends of his who were also movie buffs started a podcast. And he texted me like a month later and said, "Hey, would you host a classic film show for our podcast?" And started out, I just did one a month. And that was how it went. And then it just springboarded. And then in 2019, NPR Illinois decided to pick us up and start airing some of our episodes, and they put their name on us. And it just happened that way. It was just a self-made podcast by a bunch of guys here in the Midwest. And little by little, things started happening. And I really credit, as much as we don't wish it would have happened, the pandemic with really making my show really kicking off. Because after that was when I started doing interviews. It used to just be me and friends talking movies. But then when we were sitting at home doing nothing, one of my friends who also is part of our network called the Front Row Network hosts a Disney show, and they started getting people involved with the Disney company interviewing. And so that started me reaching out to people. I interviewed Patricia Ward Kelly, Gene Kelly's widow. I interviewed Todd Fisher, Debbie Reynolds' son and Carrie Fisher's brother. I interviewed Eddie Muller those first couple months of the pandemic. And then it just spiraled from there. And it hasn't stopped since. And who knew all these years later?
I find it so amazing. How many episodes do you drop a week? I mean, you really are a busy man.
How
do you do it?
But it just depends.
It takes a village to get Brad and myself together schedule-wise to record one a week, and you're constant.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm the only person on our network who does his show by himself. Oh. So the rest of them have like co-hosts and teams. So it's much easier when you're your own boss and can do it yourself and can schedule with guests.
But even then,
when it's appropriate for them, and I have to coordinate. But like I said, sometimes I do a lot of local theater. I've directed theater, I've acted and stuff. So when I'm doing shows, my output's a little less. But I'm really good at banking a lot of recordings during the downtimes and then having them saved up. So
you got to do that. You have to do that. Yeah. Brad has moved to Spain. He should be in Spain now. And so we thought we were good. We thought we had some episodes banked, and I knew I wanted to have some guest co-hosts, but we got down to it. We're like, oh God, we do not. So it's so important to have those banks, but your guests, I'm amazed. Listener, first of all, if you haven't listened to Brandon's podcast, my God, Front Row Classics, listen to it. Fabulous. And I'm not just saying that because I was on it, but you have everybody. I mean, you have film historians, you have authors, you have professors, you had members of the cast of The Love Boat, for God's sake. It's an embarrassment of riches, Brandon, the people you get on your podcast.
Well, and it's so funny. This was, I never dreamed when I started this that I would be interviewing people. It just happened. But what was so funny is I actually talked about this with another guest I had on couple of months ago, and I thought, it's so funny. This is something I couldn't imagine, but when I was a kid, I kind of visioned myself talking to these people. And so it's almost like, I don't know if I truly believe in manifesting or not, but it's something that I'm starting to believe it a little bit, because I'm like, I saw myself talking to the TCM hosts, and here I've talked to all kinds of them. I'm sad that the podcast took off a little bit after Robert Osborne passed away, because that would be kind of my greatest get of all time. But I can't complain.
He was an amazing guy. I think of him as kind of a mentor, because I worked with Robert a few times, and he advised me and counseled me on a lot of stuff. And he was such a great resource. And he thought of himself as a film fan. He didn't necessarily think of himself as a film historian. And that's the way I've always felt about it. I'm like, I'm not a historian. I didn't go to film school. I'm just someone who really loves movies. And when I was a kid, and I just wanted to read everything I could about movies and about TV. And it just kind of developed. Yeah. And I think that's when you come to it naturally like that, when it's like a love that you come to, it's phenomenal. You're one of your most recent episodes, I talked with you about it, And when I was on your show, you did this. You pulled out a DVD. So you did a recent episode on The Divorcee.
Yeah.
And which I thought was fantastic, by the way. I loved it. And look, I found one. See? I'm showing. Can you see that? Can you see that? I told Brandon, oh my God, The Divorcee was one of the very first DVD commentaries I ever did for Warner Home Video. I think I have one left. I think I have a spare. So this is coming to you, Brandon. Like, you need to know more about The Divorcee. But it also has, and I forgot, it also has Night Nurse on it. And that was another DVD commentary we did on Night Nurse. And I forgot all about that. Have you ever seen Night Nurse?
I have.
With Barbara Stanwyck?
I have. It was on TCM. It was a few years ago, but it's been a while. But no, I loved it.
Crazy movie. Pre-code, obviously. But, we talked about on my Ongoing Hollywood on this podcast, we talked about Babyface. It was like one of our early episodes because I wanted to talk about Pre-code. And Night Nurse, almost as crazy. Barbara Stanwyck plays a kind of a good time gal who goes to nursing school and becomes a nurse and then becomes the night nurse for this pair of young girls whose mother is a drunk, and they're slowly being starved by the mother and the chauffeur, played by a very young and mustacheless Clark Gable. Wow, and it's a crazy, crazy film. These things, they just, I don't know if these movies, they just, most of them from Warner Brothers, were just churning them out. They're real programmers. And this movie is just, it's insane. So I love that movie. It's so fun.
I could watch Barbara Stanwyck in anything.
Right?
Just for some reason, and I love Bette Davis. I love Joan Crawford. I love Katharine Hepburn. But there's something about Stanwyck that just, I could, whatever it is, whatever the genre, whatever, TV movie, theatrical movie, I can watch her in anything.
She was amazing. She worked up until the end and looked fabulous up until the end. Yeah. I mean, even in the Thornbirds, she looked fabulous. It's a funny story. And I promise not to you dip the hour with my stories because I want to talk to you. But there's a very funny story about when she was on the Colbys, the Dynasty knockoff. And they were all in the dressing room one time when they were getting ready. They were all getting made up. And she walked in and they were talking about how difficult it was to maintain their weight, to keep their weight down. And she looked at them all and she went, "You all are pigs. When I was your age, my waist was 18 and a half inches." And she walked out. And y'all are pigs.
And she was about the only reason to watch the Colbys.
Oh, she's usually the only reason to watch a lot of stuff. So what I was thinking was, since we're going to talk about one of my very, very, very favorite movies next week, that I wanted to save for somebody special to talk with, because people who listen to this podcast know that for some reason Brad has issues with George Stevens. This has been established. And I couldn't risk exposing one of my very favorite movies in the top 5 to Brad to have him tear it apart. I don't think he would, but I'm not going to risk it. So next week, Brandon and I are going to talk about, from 1943, George Stevens' The More the Merrier, a film I adore, and we're going to talk about Jean Arthur. So for this one, I kind of give a little bit of a warm up here and just a getting to know you, as I said, a little chat. Because you and I, we didn't know each other. And when I came on your podcast and we just talked, or I talked. And we just hit it off. So I just thought we should get together and just chat and see what, because I'm curious, because the way I come at this with classic film and what interests me, what is your favorite? I kind of hate when people ask me this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What is your favorite genre of film, if you have one? It doesn't have to be just one.
I mean, I love so much, but there's a special place in my heart, like I said, just because musicals were my gateway into it all. So I have a special place in my heart for musicals, but I love film noir. I love suspense. I love anything by Hitchcock. I love, I love a good 1940s melodrama. I mean, just give me Now Voyager, give me Century Away, give me anything like that. Random Harvest. Give me anything like that.
Now Voyager.
So much. I will say, my listeners know this. Kind of my my blind spots are kind of sci-fi and horror. Those are a bit of my blind spots. I've learned to love them as I've gone along, and I've had guests on who've introduced movies to me. But other than that, I mean, I pretty much have dabbled in everything.
We truly are brothers from another mother, Brandon. I swear to you. Oh, well, maybe I'm probably your uncle from another mother, but anyway. There was a long period in there until you were born. Because I feel the same way. I can appreciate horror films and I can appreciate sci-fi, but they're not my go-tos. I would not sit down. We did an episode on Bride of Frankenstein, which I love Bride of Frankenstein. I don't consider it a horror film.
Yeah.
I consider it a comedy, actually. And so did James Whale, by the way. But I can't necessarily go there unless I absolutely have to. But the melodrama, I mean, Now Voyager, Little Foxes, you just did an episode on Little Foxes.
Oh.
We just did one on Little Foxes. I feel Betty Davis's best 40s performance. I mean, she gave a lot of great performances at Warner Brothers. Yeah. I'm certainly not counting out Now Voyager. I love Now Voyager, but she's so good in Little Foxes. It astounds me every time I see it.
It's what Scott and I, my guest on that episode, talked about was she is so known for doing, and I love stereotypical Betty. I love cigarette in the hand, flinging her arms around, bugging eyes out, all of that. But when she is controlled, she plays it smaller, like in Little Foxes. It is so powerful. Like I'm thinking about the moment where, Herbert Martin, where she's, keeping his heart medicine from him, and he's going to go upstairs to get it, and he goes by the chair and he is just stumbling all across, and she is sitting there stone cold, in the chair like a statue, and he almost knocks it over, but she does not move 1 inch, even as the chair is tipping back.
Doesn't move a muscle. And that's William Wyler. I mean, that's absolutely William Wyler. Whenever she was with Wyler, the 3 times she was so controlled, and she was so, he famously said, if you don't stop moving your neck, I'm going to throw a chain around it. And she loved that kind of shit. She ate it up. I think Helen Burstyn said that she holds her mouth so tight because she doesn't want the milk of human kindness to seep out, which I thought was such an incredible image. Oh, yeah. God, yeah. She's astounding. We just talked about, we were just talking about Valley of the Dolls I think you talked about it recently too. And I was going through the what-ifs and the casting things. And, she really lobbied for the part of Helen Lawson. And I think she would have been fantastic as Helen Lawson. She would, of course, have had to have been dubbed, because even though she didn't think she probably would have to be dubbed.
Well, the couple of times she did like well, I'm thinking back to like You're Either Young or Too Old from I Think You're Lucky Stars, when she sings in that.
Well, and then also her albums, she does those albums, and
that's true.
She sang Whatever Happened to Baby Jane
on Andy Williams.
On Andy Williams, and you're just like, oh God, Betty. And then she recorded an album of she sings the theme from Now Voyager, and you're just like, oh wow, Betty. I mean, it's not Patty Duke released an album too, which is frightening, but there was she also had a hit record, Patty Duke. So there was, even with all the mixing, there was a little melody. There's no melody with Bette Davis. It's got to be a staccato, thing. But Betty in her later career, and this is going somewhere, Betty in her later career put herself out for a lot of movies she didn't get. Valley of the Dolls is one. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Another one that she really wanted to do. So I guess I'm curious. I love this. I'm fascinated by what ifs, by casting choices that did or didn't happen. Are there any that you're like, oh God, I would have loved to have seen so-and-so in that. That would have been amazing. Or, oh God, I'm glad, dodged a bullet there. Do you have anything like that you think about?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned, because you had texted me and we were talking about this topic, and it's
Brandon, you're giving away my secrets. Don't tell people.
I know.
La 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 la.
You only gave me a couple of hours to think about it.
I did.
No, but this was funny. It's an episode I haven't released yet, but a friend of mine, Tristan, and I've been doing a series of top 5 episodes lately, where me and another guest just rank our top 5 favorites. And we're doing top 5 plays that were turned into movies. Spoiler alert, but Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is on my list. And I mentioned in the episode about how I wouldn't change it at all, because Taylor and Burton were brilliant, but if they had gone with their original choices and to have seen Bette Davis and James Mason.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
Would have, and to see Bette Davis in the first scene do a Bette Davis impression.
Yes, very surreal. Like Judy Garland playing
Would have
Helen
been
Lawson
fantastic.
opposite Liza Minnelli is Neely. Yeah, so meta, so meta. Yeah, that would have been. She would have been. See, I'm of the belief, and I've said this a million times, I think that I feel like Elizabeth Taylor gives one of the greatest cinematic performances of a stage piece ever in that. That monologue she has at the screen door where it's George and Martha, sad, sad, sad. So beautiful and so moving. And then she's balls to the wall with Richard Burton, she hitting her head and yelling and screaming, and I do not pray. Yeah. But Mason and Davis would have been, in an alternate universe, that would have been amazing. Yeah. That really would have been cool. I think that, because I'm writing the book. I'm in the process of putting together a book. So it's registered with the WGA people. So hello, if you hear this, okay, I got it. About what ifs. About these casting things. And the thing that it started with me with Marilyn, because there's a whole slew of movies that Marilyn was slated for that because she died didn't happen. And so I'm really fascinated by that. And they were, she probably was, I don't want to say she was better off because she's dead, but most of the movies were not good movies, like What a Way to Go. Shirley MacLaine finally got that. Goodbye Charlie, which Debbie Reynolds. That's right. Oh my God. It's like, Debbie, what were you? Oh, good God. Bad. Yeah. So that's what I love, that kind of stuff. And I love, of course, speaking of Marilyn and Bette, the biggest Bette miss of all, but Bette got it, was All About Eve.
Everybody was considered for that.
Right. But Margo Channing was originally Claudette Colbert.
Claudette Colbert.
And to the point where you see why Anne Baxter was cast, because you can kind of see Anne Baxter as a young Claudette Colbert.
Claudette, yeah.
But I think that, I don't know, Bette made it so much her own. I don't know that I don't know that I want to see that.
I can't imagine. To me, that is, I love the three Wyler films. I love Baby Jane. I love Mr. Skeffington. There's so many famous movies I love. To me, that is Betty's pièce de résistance and All About Eve. I just think that it is, because she's able to be grand and larger than life and be human at the same time. And that's what I think is so brilliant about that performance. But it would have been fascinating to see what Colbert would have done. And it's interesting, and I've said this on my show before. It's so funny when you ask me who my favorites are, Colbert is never on my list, and yet so many movies that I love star Claudette. Midnight, Palm Beach Story, Since You Went Away, So Proudly We Hail. A ton of movies that I love have Colbert at the center, and she's just marvelous. But it would have been so different with her, and I just don't know. It might have been just as good, and we would have never known if Davis hadn't played it. But you are right. Baxter, you could easily see her morphing into Claudette Colbert, whereas, Davis eats Baxter up a little bit.
Well, yes. Well, Anne does a little eating herself, but
she does.
That voice. But it would be so fascinating if Bette had been cast originally, maybe, and it was a different world. Maybe Ida Lupino could have played Eve, because they always called Lupino the poor man's Bette Davis, and I'm sure she didn't appreciate that. But I could totally see that. But it's a perfect movie. It's a perfect movie.
I wouldn't change a thing.
My God, you think about Mankiewicz, Joseph L. Mankiewicz, and the skill of his dialogue. I love him. I'm one of the few people, maybe one of the few people. I love Cleopatra. I'm guilty of loving Cleopatra. Yeah, it's long. It's way too long. But I'm fascinated by that movie. I'm sure you've seen Cleopatra. It takes a couple weeks, but.
Oh yeah, I've done an episode on it.
Did you? Well, see, I'm not doing homework here. I should have checked that.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I think my only issue with Cleopatra is I don't think it's a bad movie at all. I think my only problem is because so much of it was cut. the movie feels a little uneven to me. It feels like
Yeah.
it can't decide what it wants to be, because it's like one scene, it'll feel very grand and Shakespearean, and then in another scene, it'll feel very soapy.
Yeah.
And so the transitions are a little clunky to me. And I'm like, but I'm like, well, if we saw the full 6-hour thing, it probably would come across much clearer to what Mankiewicz is trying to do.
Yeah, it's such an interesting. I mean, had they been able to release it in 2 parts, I think, who knows? It's all speculation. These are all what ifs, and this is what film historians do, folks. So they do these what ifs in their head. Like, what if Cleopatra had been able to be released in 2 parts? Would it have been any different? I just love some of the when she says to Rex Harrison, and when she comes into Rome and she kicks the pillow down for him to kneel on her, and she goes, "You have such bony knees." I just like, that's such a Joseph L. Mankiewicz line, It's right out of "You're too short for that" gesture in All About Eve. It's just Mankiewicz, what an erudite, sophisticated. I love Mankiewicz. I could watch. He's one of my favorites.
Even his lesser stuff, like The Barefoot Contessa, all has something incredible. I love A Letter to Three Wives.
Me too.
The dialogue in that is so incredible and so snappy. I just love A Letter to Three Wives and All About Eve. Like, doing those back to back is one of the best double headers any director or writer has ever done.
It is. On one of my many cross country trips in my life, one time, this is so. I can't believe I'm admitting to this. I actually audio taped All About Eve, the entire film, and listened to it like it was a book on tape or a book on CD or it was Audible. We're talking in the 90s here. And someone said, "That is the gayest thing I've ever heard in my life." I'm like, at least it wasn't Valley of the Dolls. So
But the thing about Mankiewicz movies, they're so erudite and so witty, they can pass as radio plays almost. You don't even need the visuals.
Totally. I love Sleuth too. I mean, obviously he didn't write Sleuth, but I love Sleuth. What do you think about Sleuth? Isn't it brilliant?
I think Sleuth is great. And even Mankiewicz's, earlier stuff that don't quite have his mark on it yet, even something like Dragon Wick, something like, The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, which is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
They still have that kind of very literary aspect to it that Mankiewicz always brings. And even though I've got my issues with the movie version of Guys and Dolls, it still has a bit of the Mankiewicz touch on it.
Oh, absolutely. And what a family. My God, what a family tree.
Yeah.
He's one of my very favorites. Who's your favorite? If you had to pick your favorite director from classic Hollywood, and you can take it up to the 90s, it's fine. Who would you pick?
I've gone back and forth, but always the one that pops into my head first would be Hitchcock, just because I can watch a Hitchcock movie any day of the week. But if I think about it, and I think about just in terms of the range of what they could do, for me, it's hard to top Billy Wilder.
Right.
I'm just like, when you go from Double Indemnity to Sunset Boulevard to Some Like It Hot to The Lost Weekend to Sabrina to Witness for the Prosecution, it's just like, to The Apartment. What a body of work.
It is an incredible body of work. Yeah.
And they're all so different, and yet they have his cynical brand on them. Even the ones that are lighthearted and feel good, Some Like It Hot's a little bit cynical. Sabrina has a bit of cynicism to it. It's
very much.
Really great. And they've all got their nice quirk element to them. I'm just like, his work holds up so well. Even things like A Foreign Affair, I love.
I love A Foreign Affair. And when you don't even factor in the fact that he also wrote them. I mean, he not only directed them. Look, I love William Wyler. William Wyler is definitely in my top 5 or 3, but he didn't write Billy Wilder also wrote these films. I mean, it's astounding when you think the talent of this man and the breadth of that talent. From Ninotchka, which he wrote, he obviously didn't direct it, but from Ninotchka all the way up to Ace in the Hole. I mean, these films that he wrote, and then the later ones that he directed. And you're right. They're so subversive. I was talking about Sabrina. Sabrina is a pretty dark movie. People think because they're constantly playing "Isn't It Romantic" in Sabrina, because Paramount owned it, so they're going to play it all the time. That really, but it lends such a romantic. Everybody thinks, oh, it's such a romantic movie. It's such a romantic. No, it's not really. She's fallen in
She tries
love.
to asphyxiate herself.
She tries to kill herself. She goes in the end. Her choice is the older man for security. So maybe she's pretty smart. But you know what I mean? She's basically. It's really a comment on choosing love or choosing security. And everyone goes, oh, it's such a romantic film, Sabrina. It's not. It's not at all. It's a very practical film, very practical choice.
It is.
You know, I love that.
It is.
In The Apartment, gets me every time. I mean, talk about cynical but the underbelly of the cynicism, which is also the heart, and how it goes back and forth between tragedy and comedy and tragedy and comedy. That's genius filmmaking, you know.
Shirley MacLaine is heartbreaking.
She is.
Man, she is so good. And I love, I heard you all, your infamous Alice Adams episode. You talk about Fred MacMurray, and I appreciate Fred MacMurray so much as, he's okay when he's a romantic lead, but when he plays a bastard, whether it's Double Indemnity or The Apartment or The King Mutiny, that is when he's the most interesting.
I find that fascinating. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
He has.
And of course I love The Absent-Minded Professor and The Shaggy Dog and all that stuff. But when he plays a villain, he's perfect.
There's something in MacMurray that just fits that perfectly, and it's so funny because he's got that. We use this term when we talk about Lucy, that General Foods image. And yet he had his real métier, if you want to say that, were these assholes, these really reprehensible characters. Something about that, he plugged into that. It's funny. You could say the same thing about Lucy, really. I mean, I'm not going to go in on Lucy because we talked enough about her, but the woman played all kinds of roles before she found Lucy Ricardo. And there was something about that hardness to her that she was able to soften when she played Lucy Ricardo, but that seeped out once in a while. And you're like, oh, there's something. That's why she would have been.
The big straight.
Yes, my God, right? Yeah. Oh my God. Dance Girl Dance, which is my favorite 40s Lucy. She's so gorgeous. And Bubbles, the character in Dance Girl Dance, is nothing like Lucy Ricardo. She's so sexy and guttural, and her dialect kind of comes and goes, and that, but it's okay. It's Lucy. Yeah, I think that's why, speaking of what ifs, we talked about this on the podcast. One of the biggest what ifs is Lucy and the Manchurian Candidate, and how that would have just totally changed history. I mean, Lansbury, you can't touch that performance. She's astounding in that performance. But wow, Lucy would have been something in that.
It would have been fascinating. I don't even know. It's so fun because that releases in '62, and so who knows if the Lucy show and Here's Lucy even happens if she does that.
No, exactly. And I think she knew that. Yeah.
I mean, and she could have had a totally different career at that point. I mean, I don't know. It might have been too startling for people, and it might have ended her career. Who knows what would have happened at that point.
Yeah. I think if she hadn't had a studio to run and save, basically, in '62, Desilu was really on the ropes. Yeah. And so she had to go back to do the Lucy show to kind of save Desilu and keep that studio going. If she was just an actress and she was offered that part, I bet she would have done it, and it would have been something that is crazy. It's crazy. What do you think about Audrey Hepburn and My Fair Lady, Mr. Musical? I'm just going to totally change the subject on you.
I agree. I agree with the late great Robert Osborne. I think she was miscast. Mm-hmm. I think that I love Audrey Hepburn, but it's hard to buy her as the.
Oh yeah.
I mean, of course, she's gorgeous in the second half of the movie after she's gone through the transition and everything. But it's hard to buy her as a flower girl in the beginning, and the dubbing doesn't bother me because I think it's fine. I think it's. To me, the dubbing works less for Natalie Wood in West Side Story than it does for Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady. But I don't know. It's rough. I think that it's hard to really, it's hard to really buy her in those opening scenes between and she and Rex Harrison, I think, have a nice chemistry, but I wish Julie Andrews had done it, but of course we wouldn't have gotten Mary Poppins, so you can't really
exactly.
argue with it.
You can't. Yeah, I actually, I'm a little softer to Audrey in My Fair Lady.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. Yes, she was just not born to play a gutter snipe. I mean, it's just not in her DNA. There's just something aristocratic about Audrey, even when she was, stealing tulip bulb. That's Breakfast at Tiffany's, but another one that you're like, okay.
Yeah.
It was, Breakfast at Tiffany's. She's not. No, in what universe is she really Holly Golightly? But I think I feel better about her at Holly Golightly than I do My Fair Lady.
Now that would have been fascinating if Capote had gotten his way in Monroe.
Yeah. I mean, come on. That's another one of the Marilyn. Although that was obviously made before Marilyn died, and there were other reasons why Marilyn didn't do it. But I mean, I always thought in the parallel universe it would be really cool to see Marilyn as Holly, and to see what Marilyn would bring to it. I think that's a huge what if. Marilyn. Because Marilyn's life ended when she was 36 years old, so young, we didn't get to see this great actress come into her full fruition. And I just think about the things that she could have done later on that people would have just knocked people on their asses, I think. Because the woman, she's one of my very favorites because she makes it look so easy. Yeah. And that's the proof. She's like Meryl Streep, and people hold on to your phones. Don't drop them just because I said that. Let me explain. Meryl Streep makes it look so easy. That's what good actresses do. They make it look like they're not acting, they're being. And Marilyn always just was. She just was.
Yeah. Yeah. She really, there are some moments in The Misfits that she is really, you feel so uncomfortable in some of those moments because she's so real. And even Gable in The Misfits, I feel like he's giving, the king of the studio system is almost giving a method performance in The Misfits in some of those scenes. It really is, it's an unsettling movie when you go back and watch it.
Oh, it's so unsettling. It's hard to watch sometimes because it really is. But you're right. They're all giving these method performances, and even though Gable didn't know he was, I agree with you. I really think he was. I'm sure there was a part of him which recognized himself in Gay, in the fact that his life was literally winding down, and ended so soon after that. And I find her, but when I find Marilyn, I love Marilyn. My favorite Marilyn is Prince and the Showgirl. I think she's so wonderful in Prince and the Showgirl, and I really believe she wipes Olivier off the screen in Prince and the Showgirl. He's so mannered, and he's so technical, and that's the genius about Laurence Olivier, of course. But Marilyn she's cinematic, she's film, she just is, and I love her in that. Do you have a favorite Monroe movie?
I love the one, like my Sunday afternoon one that I can watch over and over again is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. I just think that is so fun. Her and Jane Russell together are glorious. I also really love Niagara. I think that she's I wish she had played more villainesses, because I think that she really comes across very sinister in Niagara, and it's fun. That movie's just, first of all, it's beautiful cinematography to watch, and I think that she is just fascinating in that movie. And the moment where she wakes up and she hears those bells chime and she knows that he's coming after her now, that's some great screen acting from her. But what a year 53 was for her to do Niagara, How to Marry a Millionaire, and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes all in the same year.
Astounding. Incredible. She just exploded on the movie going public after being in the trenches for so many years. And then there's a wonderful documentary. Have you ever seen the documentary about Something's Gotta Give? It's called Something's Gotta Give. There's two of them actually, but there was one that was
Is it the
longer.
one that AMC did years ago?
Yes, where they kind of reconstructed it.
Yeah.
The hugest...
Dean Martin and Sid Charisse,
Yeah, what they did was they talked about the making of the film and what went wrong and Marilyn. And then at the end of the documentary, they reconstructed it. This is what it would have looked like with the existing footage. And, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, that the rumors about Marilyn giving a terrible performance, about just being doped up and acting like she was underwater and all that stuff. The footage totally contradicts that and shows that, no, this is what makes me so sad. This is a huge what if. And then I'm getting goosebumps. Hey, Marilyn. Because she's so beautiful. she's like at her peak. She's lost all the baby fat. She looks fantastic. She's an adult. She's a wonderful comic actress in Something's Gotta Give. And her, it's perfection. She's perfection in the footage that's left. Don't you think?
Oh, I think so. I think she's wonderful. And it would have been interesting to see her age and to see what she would have done, how she would have become more of this sort of sleek, funny, comedian almost, because she really had a flair for comedy and in dramatic roles, and and what the movie became, Move Over Darling with Doris Day and James Garner it's pleasant enough. I prefer the thrill of it all, the one that Garner.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
But
I do too.
But to see like her and Martin could have been something special on the screen together.
Yeah, and their chemistry. I mean, and there's an inherent danger in Monroe, that you just don't get from Doris Day. I'm sorry, you just don't get danger from Doris Day. But with Marilyn, it goes back to that. You said you'd love to see her play more villainous, air quotes, roles, because you got an unease with Marilyn. There was a danger with Marilyn. You could believe that she was duplicitous and that there was something else going on. And I love that quality about her. And yet so light. There's such a lightness of touch. I find that, I also find that with Garbo. You're a Garbo fan.
Oh, yeah.
Garbo, Grand Hotel accepting, there's such a lightness to Garbo when she's in the right role. You guys were talking about it on your Divorcee episode. You were talking about how perhaps Garbo was Garbo up for it? Was that a what if, or were they just talking about it?
She'd been bandied about for it. Yeah, definitely.
But it would have been pack your man. Totally, I can't imagine her saying pack your man's pride with the rest, and from now on my door is only closed to you, or something like that. I'm bastardizing. Can you imagine her saying that in Swedish?
No.
You're the only man my door is closed to, or something like that.
And I love Garbo, and I will say Anna Christie is a bit of a slog to get through.
Oh, yeah.
But all of the Queen Christina and Camille and Anna Karenina and Ninochka, she was just something. I mean, nobody ever liked that on screen.
No, I think Anna Christie's a slog because it's an early talkie. And, just to hear her talk, but I don't give a damn about what you want. I mean, it's just
and
so
I don't buy her. I don't buy her and Charles Bickford. Is it?
Oh, God, no. I don't buy anybody with Charles Bickford. He's like Chester Morris. I'm like, what?
That's true.
What's the point here? That's why they.
Yeah, on the Divorcee, Robert Montgomery's more interesting.
Oh my God, so much more interesting and adorable. You're like, what? Yeah, you guys talk about Chester Morris in that, and I always thought, the face looks like he ran into a wall or something because he's got that flat face. But that's all MGM had at that time. This was pre-Gable, pre-Tracy. They really were scrambling to get some leading men. So you got Chester Morris. Oh well, what are you gonna do? I love the Divorcee. I do. I loved what you guys said about it and your talk on. I love all the episodes you do. Do you have a favorite? And you don't have to, let me rephrase that because I don't want to, I don't want to put you on the spot with that. Is there one that you, how do I say this? It doesn't sound like you have a favorite. Is there one that you think about more than you think about another one? And that's not good or bad. So there you go. We just saved you.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, well, and I don't know. That is a hard question just because I've had a lot of special moments on the show.
Yeah, I bet.
My biggest, I will say the one that I couldn't believe, and since I'm talking to you and you've talked to her as well, but my conversation with Lucy Arnaz was really because we did that on a Friday night, and most of the time my guests, I let them know, my episodes tend to go for 45 minutes to an hour. We talked for an hour and a half. She, and even when I was ready to wrap up, she still was going to be willing to keep going. And
awesome.
It was just, it was just amazing. And for how much, and we talked about this when you were on, how much I Love Lucy meant to me growing up. And I wanted to make sure, interviewing her because I am a fan of Lucy Arnaz just as much as I am of anybody
Right.
else in her family.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure the first 45 minutes of that episode are devoted to her.
Good.
And we talked about they're playing our song, and we talked about, you know, all of the stuff that she did on Here's Lucy and her time in theater and everything.
Yeah.
But then the last portion of it, I asked about her parents. We talked I Love Lucy because there was a lot of it was the 70th anniversary of I Love Lucy, so there were a lot of events we were talking about. But it was a little bit of a surreal moment because I figured I have her there, and it's like the closest chance I'm ever going to be able to thank Lucy and Desi.
Right.
To be able to thank her.
That's how I
for
felt.
that. And so that was kind of just an out of body moment. But I've had that with a lot of people. Some of my favorite episodes have been talking with children or grandchildren of people, and to be able to just have that. I've spoken with Earl Luft, and that was a great conversation. I've spoken with, like I said, Todd Fisher, and I've spoken with I haven't released it yet, but I talked to two of Gregory Peck's sons, Anthony and Carrie Peck, and that was a great discussion because what you'll hear when I talk to both of them, and I talk to them separately, but it's going to be one episode. Carrie, who is now in his 80s, was born in the 40s when Peck was at his most busy. So when I would ask him about times at home, he's very honest. He said, "No, I loved my dad, but I don't have too many memories of him at home. It was just me and my mom because he was working all the time."
Yeah.
And then Anthony, who was born about a decade or so later, that was when the studio system broke down, and Greg was able to take him on location with him. So he spent a lot of time with his dad. So it was two different perspectives. And so it's fascinating when you get to talk to people from their perspective of what their parent was like. And then I've talked to Maria Cooper Janis, the daughter of Gary Cooper. And so, it's great to get like that personal view as opposed to talking to just a historian who studied them.
No, it's so true. It's so true because, you can't replace that real thing. It's amazing. I felt that so much about Lucy when we talked. It was that, like I said on your show, she is her mother's daughter. She is her mother's daughter, and you just get that energy from her that Lucy also must have emanated she's calling the shots here. It's okay. But kind and loving and funny. And I said to her, it's funny you talked about they're playing our song, because that was the first thing I said to her was the song I Still Believe in Love was like a theme song in my college years, because I just loved that song from they're playing our song. And she was like stunned that I knew it. I'm like, what do you mean? You ain't sitting down with some dope. I know what I'm talking about. But it's just like, she's done such great work, and yet she's got that mantle she has to carry. The fact that, and she carries it beautifully, and she carries it with grace, and she's a great custodian of her parents' legacy. And who can ask for better? Who can ask for more than that? It's astounding to me when you have someone like that. And then you also have then you have the Lizas and the Lornas, who are also very great custodians of their mother's legacy and, keeping the torch lit. What was your conversation with Lorna like?
She was great. And it's interesting because I tried to get Lorna on her own a couple of times, but she's so busy because she's always doing, either cabaret shows. And one time I tried to get her and I almost got her, but then she decided to join the tour in England of White Christmas, which I saw her in White Christmas when she was in St. Louis here a few years ago, which was great. But actually, another friend of mine, another relative of somebody, James Duke Mason, who is James Mason's grandson, knows her.
Yes. Yeah, I know Duke, yeah.
And so he got her on, and I had the two of them on, and we talked about A Star Is Born, which was great to have both of them on together.
Yeah.
But she was great. She very much the same energy as Lucy. I felt like there's a wryness and just a no BS with either one of them, which was wonderful.
Yeah, well, when you think of how many children of famous legends, that's not redundant, of legends end up not doing too good, there's just a common sense to them about this is life. This is life. No illusions here, folks. Yeah. My parents were my parents, and the way they are, Lucy in particular, is so honest about her parents, and I'm sure Lorna too, about her parents and what they went through, but still have that great love for them and did the work. I think that's the thing. They had to do the same work we all have to do with our parents. Yeah. We as we get older and we begin to understand what they went through, that they were really people. I feel like you get that sense so much that you don't get with other people so much, I mean, there's different situations about that.
Yeah, no, and she was adorable because I interviewed her during Pride Week in June, and she had just thrown the first pitch out of the Yankee game the night before for Pride Night at Yankee Stadium, and she was freaking out about it because she said she had never held a baseball in her life. So she was telling me stories about her and her neighbor in her building, like practicing throwing it down the hallway.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Oh God, Judy never said, "Let's go out and play catch." Lorna, let's go play catch. Where's Joe?
I guess not. No.
Come on, children. That's too funny. That's too funny. I can imagine, as I do more podcasts and I look back on episodes that I really love and episodes I'm like, oh, I wish I could redo that episode. They come in ones that I'm really excited about that don't turn out well, or ones that I don't even think about, and I listen to them. I'm like, hey, that's a good one. Do you have ones like that? Do you have ones where you're like, you listen to it and you're like, oh wow, that came off a lot better than I thought it did, or vice versa? And you don't have to mention specific ones, just a general question.
Yeah, well, separately, there's. I don't want to mention names, but there's interviews where I didn't think the person was necessarily going to be an interesting guest when you had them on, and you listen back, they were really, he and I or she and I really clicked. And
I know you're talking about me in our interview, Brandon. You didn't think I'd be much, I know. Oh, he's actually got something to say.
No, not at all.
I know, I'm kidding.
And then you listen back, and then there's ones where you're really excited, and then you start the interview and they're not conversational at all, and they give you just like one or two answers. And it's just really, really uncomfortable. And it ends up being when I'm doing an interview, I am a follower of kind of the 80-20 rule. It needs to be 80% of the guest, 20% me. Mm-hmm. And when episodes don't go that way, and I feel like it's overly me, I feel like I didn't set out to that didn't end up the way I set out to be. But sometimes you're just going to have that, and then on the other kind of episodes that I do, where I just chat a movie with somebody. There are times where I sit back and I listen and I'm like, oh, I sound a little bit like a know-it-all on that one, and I should have toned it down a little bit. But no, it's funny. I don't listen back often. I'll listen back once because I'll go and edit them.
Sure, of course.
But that it's rare that I'll go back and just listen to my own work, on my own just for fun. But sometimes I do, and sometimes I'll think, that wasn't half bad.
I go back and listen, and I give Brad notes. No wonder he's not here. No wonder he moved to Spain. He's like, maybe Tony will stop giving me notes from episodes we did a year and a half ago.
That's hilarious.
No,
the banter between you two is fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny because I got to give you credit, because interviewing somebody week after week after week, and you have to not only learn about what you're talking about, you have to learn about them. I mean, I know what's coming to the table when I talk with Brad and we talk about a movie, but you have your research must be so like I said, I don't know how you do it, and you have a day job. I mean, it's astounding to me.
Well, I have to say, if I was interviewing people not having to do with movies or not having to do with entertainment, it would be more of a chore. But because growing up in it, and I have a bit of an encyclopedic movie. I don't necessarily, as long as I'm learning about the person, a lot of times the subject I don't need to study up a whole lot on. Now, if I'm talking about a movie with somebody, I like to watch it twice before I do that. But no, and if someone's written a book, I like to, if I can, read it. If not, I do a lot of driving, so I'll listen to the audiobook on Audible or something like that.
Yeah, it's the best.
So I like to do that. But you know what? A lot of times, the people who I'm getting or I'm reaching out to are people who I want to talk to. So it doesn't feel necessarily like a chore, which is what's fantastic about it. I mean, what's been great is having a relationship with the publishing house that deals with books from TCM and places like that, because they're good about sending you a book, well in advance before it releases, so you have time to absorb it before you have to do an interview with the author. So the good thing is I have nice time a lot of times. There have been a couple of times where I've gotten an email from someone who I reached out to months ago, and they'll, say, "Oh, we'll get in touch with you," and then they'll say, "Oh, they can do it tomorrow at noon," or something like that, and you have to scramble. But those are few and far between.
See, that's something I'm fairly new to this media, the podcasting, so it's a learning experience. It's a curve, and Brad has been such a great support of mine and in getting us through this. And so now I'm kind of like saying, okay, I'm just kind of stepping out and saying, I can take care of that. I can take care of that. So it's not always on him to take care of the technical stuff. So hopefully it worked with this episode and the recording worked, because if we got to do this again. No, I love talking to you. We said it before after I was on your show. It's just like it really is like a brother from another mother, because I find so many things, we have so many things in common that we've experienced maybe in different eras, but we've experienced so much, and we come to things so much. So it's really a delight to talk with you about these things, because I think and to get your perspective, I think it's thrilling. It's thrilling. Where can people find you? Talk to the people about how they can find you and track you down.
Well, first of all, we were talking about what ifs. Can I give you my biggest what if of them all?
Oh, of course.
And I've said this on my show before, but the biggest what if for me is Judy Garland in the movie version of Gypsy.
Oh, wow. Or Mame, by the way.
Or Mame. Although I think I would, just to hear her sing the score for Gypsy. Definitely. Yeah. Even though 1962, she would have been 40, maybe a little young, but.
Oh God, that's amazing. Yeah. Singing the score, I think I told you that I had a friend of mine, we were talking about the Hello Dolly, and someone was bitching about that Carol Channing didn't do it, that Barbara did it. And this guy said, be honest with me. Who would you really rather hear sing before the parade passes by? Be honest. And you're like, yeah, okay. Who else would you rather hear? Yes, too young. Yes, no chemistry with Walter Matthau. But who else would you rather hear sing that score? Come on. And we have it because of that. So anyway, that's great. That's great. I would love to hear that too.
Yeah. But no, people can find me anywhere you find your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, any of those places. Just look for Front Row Classics podcast and you will find me. I have a library now of about 350 some episodes. So.
Amazing.
Over a decade. Wow.
So, incredible. And people can find you right here next week, because Brandon's coming back for week number 2. I think I'm safe to say this went pretty well, right? I think you can come back for a second week, right?
Tony, I think you and I are going to go places.
We are. Here we go, world. Gangway world, get off of our runways. Yes, Brandon's going to be back here next week, and we're going to talk about the delightful, at least in my opinion, and I'm thinking probably yours too, The More the Merrier from 1943, starring the luminous Jean Arthur, Charles Coburn.
And the very underrated Joel McCrea.
So underrated. Yeah. Well, we'll talk. Yes. We'll talk.
Save it for the podcast, as always.
So everybody, I can't do it. What Brad always says at the end of these episodes is, don't forget to follow, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. You know the drill. Reach over and do it. I love it. You guys are great. I love you. Thanks for sticking with me through this interesting period we're about to go into. Hopefully, like Shelley the Winters, I'll be a very skinny lady in the water, and we'll make it through to the other side, and we won't have a heart attack at the end. So Brandon, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. I usually have a fun sign-off with Brad, but I really need another person to do it, and I don't know if we should, because Brad might get upset. So let me say this.
That's all right.
Because we're not saying goodbye. I'm going to see you next week. So
see you next week.
Let's not say goodbye. Let's say see you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks so much, Brandon. Goodbye, everybody.
That's all, folks.